institutions be at variance with laid-down procedures across key management positions, inconsistent in financial regulations, and other issues of governance deficit in our academic communities. Find out on NTA Tuesday Live every week at 10:30 p.m. It promises to be inclusive, incisive, and educative. Join us.
All right, welcome back. It's still Good Morning Nigeria, live on the network service of the NTA. And as a prompt to our conversation this morning, which is on 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, let's quickly take a look at this background report put together by our correspondent, Ibrahim Danhamidu.
Gender-based violence is a pervasive pandemic that affects every corner of our society. It is a crisis that manifests in various forms: domestic abuse, sexual harassment, female genital mutilation, and child marriage, among others. According to the National Demographic and Health Survey, a staggering 1 in every 3 women in Nigeria has experienced physical, emotional, or sexual violence. This translates to millions of women and girls whose lives have been forever altered by these heinous acts. However, it is essential to acknowledge that men and boys can also experience gender-based violence. Research has shown that men can be victims of domestic abuse, sexual assault, and other forms of violence, often perpetrated by women or other men. A study by the Nigerian National Human Rights Commission found that 1 in 5 men reported experiencing physical or emotional abuse by their partners. Moreover, the stigma surrounding male victims of gender-based violence can make it even more challenging for them to seek help and support. The impact of gender-based violence is devastating, with far-reaching consequences for individuals, families, and communities. It is a crisis that demands our collective attention and action. But there's hope. The 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence is a global campaign that seeks to raise awareness, mobilize communities, and inspire action to end this scourge. This annual campaign, which begins on November 25th, the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, and ends on December 10th, Human Rights Day, serves as a powerful reminder of our shared responsibility to create a world free from violence and abuse. As we mark these 16 days, we remember the survivors, the victims, and their families. We acknowledge the progress made, but we also recognize the enormous work that still needs to be done. So, what can you do? Experts are of the opinion that one can start by listening to the stories of survivors, believing them, and amplifying their voices. People can support organizations working tirelessly to provide services and advocate for policy changes. Most importantly, you can be an active bystander. When you witness or hear about incidents of gender-based violence, report it, speak out against it, and support those affected. Together, we can create a Nigeria where everyone, regardless of gender, age, or background, can live without fear of violence or abuse. A Nigeria where everyone can thrive. On Good Morning Nigeria today, our panel of experts will discuss these prevailing issues and strategies to combat gender-based violence in Nigeria.
All right, many thanks, Ibrahim and Hamid, for that background report. And let's quickly introduce our guests here in the studio to begin this conversation. And I'd like to begin with Olajumoke Adeniyi, who is Head of Operations at Hassam Foundation and a gender advocate. It's a pleasure welcoming you to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much for having me here. The pleasure's mine.
And let me also introduce Dr. Dail Planksat, who holds a PhD and is a gender specialist and an experienced policy and development analyst with a demonstrated history of working in the higher education industry. She is the immediate past director of the Center for Gender and Women's Studies at the University of Jos and currently the Deputy Dean, Faculty of Social Sciences, University of Jos. A pleasure to welcome you.
Good morning.
Good morning, Nigeria.
Thank you.
All right, Victor is at a disadvantage this morning. It's a studio filled with women, very powerful women at that, and it's an honor.
Not only women, but everybody seems to have a touch of orange. Well, I have apple. I think apples and oranges are friends, so we can
Not
work
at all.
with that.
Not at all. You're at risk. I must, let you know so that you know how to play safe on set this morning.
I'll be guided.
Good. All right. So, also joining us for the conversation, it's an honor to introduce the one and the only veteran broadcaster, Chief Mrs. Moji Makonjuola, MFR, the Executive Director and Founder, International Society of Media in Public Health and Development. It's a pleasure to have you, ma'am.
Mine. Good morning, Nigerians.
Welcome.
All right. Let's just roll from here, and I'd like to ask Dr. Plansat what the different forms, of what we now call gender-based violence are, of course, with as it concerns Nigeria, and what are the major cultural factors that are fueling or influencing these practices?
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I think gender-based violence itself is a wider context, trying to define violence that it's targeted at persons based on their gender. And it's a word sometimes used interchangeably to refer to violence against women at the same time too, because of the proportionate disadvantage that women face in society. Often in literature, you hear people talking about patriarchy being at the root of GBV, because over time, culture, social norms, beliefs, values, practice, etc., have made women and children, as a matter of fact, including boys and men, to internalize violence as a way of living, And over time, when this happens, you notice that within culture, in society, in families, when it is directed at the woman or the girl child, it is expected to be accepted and tolerated. So it appears as if when there's a case of GBV, it's expected that the girl, the woman, etc. will have to accept it as normal, and that's why it becomes very pervasive. And we've moved from society and culture to take that even to formal spaces. So you notice that there's violence from the family, and patriarchy sits at the center of it. And then you're having also workplace violence, which also affects progress, it affects productivity, etc. In tertiary institutions, for example, where I work, we've been talking about sexual harassment, which is also a form of gender-based violence, targeted at young ladies. We're not saying that boys on campus also, or male lecturers, etc., are not experiencing violence. But we're talking about proportionately, who faces it more. And until we're able to bridge that gap, the discussion will continue to tilt towards the female and also the women and the girl child. Because for now, the data speaks more, because they say data speaks. So if you look at the data, you'll notice that it affects the girl child, it affects the woman more than the man. So the GBV comes in different forms.
I'm sorry, should we be talking proportion? Earlier you had mentioned, that boys, girls, women, everybody now, it appears that a lot of people see violence as a way of life. Shouldn't it be focused on, reorientating our people rather than, proportion? Okay, if it's, perhaps we'll be saying then that if it's balanced, then it's fair.
Sorry, I don't know, I have to laugh. I didn't bring in issue of proportion for the fact that I wanted to say if it's balanced, then it's fair. What we're saying is that the interventions, we need numbers to intervene. We need numbers for budgetary purposes. So you don't just intervene out of nothing. So you must dig the data to find out what is the extent of the impact of GBV. And so the numbers come up. Of course, orientation, changing people's mindset, reorientation, advocacy, etc., sits at the center of it. We need to work with both boys and men, not because we want them to only partner with women and girls, but because we want the men to work on men. Are you getting it? So the interventions vary.
Is it just men working on men, or
We need the men to work also on men, because we are trying to dismantle a patriarchal structure now. Are you getting it? That is making this thing to be what? Pervasive. Over time, it passes from culture to culture to culture, and that's why I talked about the culture of impunity and tolerance for GBV, because it passes from one generation to other. Of course, we have women who also sit at the center of ensuring that these things are perpetuated.
Exactly. So that's what I wanted to draw your attention to. You saying men working on men. I think it should be both men and women, you know, talking to themselves, because even from homes, you talked about violence at home. Even from homes, we see parents, you know, making the men or the boys, you know, superior to the girls that they have, you know, in the way they are treated, the kind of things, you know, they give to their boys is different from what they give to girls. In some homes, only boys go to school, girls don't go to school. So, I mean, it's even mothers also carry out these acts.
Yeah, we also have another case of it in the other parts of the country where you have the girls going to school more than the girls. So interventions have to be, they have to be compartmentalized because they vary. Are you getting it? In DRPC, for example, the Development Research and Project Center where I consult, we have this Muslim opinion leaders cluster where we work with them, because they look at religious texts and co and see the positive things to pick. Are you getting it? So when you're intervening, you must be targeted. You don't always do a cocktail at the time. Are you getting it? There are instances where you need to do a cocktail. There are instances where it's a target. So when you're targeting men, you should know what you're targeting them to do. If you're targeting women, you need to know what you're targeting them to do.
I think I'll pause you here, Dr. Plankset.
Yes.
Let's get to Chief Mrs. Mojima Controller now. You know, listening to Dr. Plankset and, of course, a lot of speakers, every year we always have 16 days of activism. We keep talking, yet the numbers are not reducing. And then you wonder why. We also have laws. There's the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act, that's VAP. Then you ask, is that act really effective? Tell us, what's the statistics, number of states that have, you know, domesticated the VAP Act, and what is happening, you know, with it?
Well, first I wouldn't do a guesswork with the number of states that have domesticated it. Except Kano for now, that has not domesticated, that is signed in the law. But the concern for us and for any advocate, man, woman, is that what is the state of implementation? It's okay, I mean, to have a law, but what is the state of implementation? And that's why we would always give kudos to Lagos, because Lagos State stands out as one of the states that have gone into implementation. So perpetrators are caught, they're taken to the court, and justice has been administered. Well, I think 2 years back, we had like a website that was made national where perpetrators are listed. People, especially those that have, you know, been convicted, are listed so that you know who that person is. I like the fact that some of them that have been jailed, they have long-term jail, they have long jail terms. So they're keeping away from humans. But let's come back to your question, which is so interesting. Why are the figures rising? We found out that even in crisis, that's when we have a lot of these figures rising. Like the figures we had at COVID. I mean, it was mind-blowing. Here were people locked in who were supposed to, you know, keep safe in terms of harnessing the best times for health. And what we had was the high figures of women that have been abused. And the concern again is that Okay, it spreads across board. It's not just at the, the family level is even more. It's for me. I keep wondering. We have more fathers. We don't have the figures here, you know, having abusing their daughters. It's an abomination even in our tradition and culture, but it's there. It's happening, and I think why it's because the world has become an open space, so people can talk about. People before now, people won't talk. A woman that has been abused, say for example, a woman that has been raped, nobody would say any. Oh, okay, quiet. You become stigmatized
Because of the stigma. Yeah.
But the issue now is speak out. We need to know. No excuse. That's the theme. No excuse for abusing a woman. No excuse for. Look, I mean, how do you speak to the psyche of a man who gets turned on with a 3-year-old, with a 3-month-old, and abuse that child? Some of these abuse are not. They can't repair them. You can't repair the trauma that leads to the child with that victim. I don't want to call them victim, for a person that has been so abused for life. A raped child lives with that forever. You cannot take that away. It takes the grace of God, and cancel it. And then we have several other things that we need to talk about. How does a child who is raped, who understands that what uncle is doing is not right? So we need to keep talking about it until we get to the 0 level where we do not have complaints, when we do not have it happening. That's when we would stop with the 16 days of activism. And for me, I keep saying, it's not about 16 days. It's an everyday thing. And I think I want to say that my constituency, the media, has a lot of role to play. Play in the sense that oftentimes we don't give the visibility that is needed for crimes committed against human. Take, for example, some of the crimes submitted under the GBV. It's not just rape, abuse, mental torture, emotional torture. And we can see that it cuts us, because these days, if you look, more women are down with mental illness because of what they're going through. Agreed that, and it has its impact on our economy, on our social life, on our tradition, on our well-being, on our productivity. It's one crime that everybody has a role to play in. It's a human torture, and you don't have to be a victim. You don't have for you to listen out to people that have been so abused. Some of them become, they alienate themselves from the society. They see every man. They cringe. Because when we see them, and, it breaks my heart as a mother of girls, myself, and thank God that we were not exposed to it. But anybody could be a victim. What do you say to an 80-year-old woman who is actually getting ready to go home, that has been so abused, so raped? So it cuts across age, it cuts across class. But what we are saying is we have a law, VAB. Let's implement that law to the letter.
Implementation, of course, it's key. Thank you very much, Madam. But let's get to Dr. Deni now. Mrs. Makonjola made mention of culture of silence. Silence being, a major issue affecting the increase and all that. And she says, well, maybe people are beginning to speak up. I don't know if you agree with that, because with those who have even spoken up in recent times, we're saying that the penalty for those who carry out these acts, I mean, it's very light. So of course people want to continue in that way. And then for those who speak up, stigma is still a major issue. How many mothers, would really want to speak up about their child being raped, maybe by their father or by a relative or by whoever? I mean, that's still a major issue. How do we deal with silence, the fact that people should come out and speak up and not be ashamed to say that this is what I'm going through, in the hands of a man?
Thank you very much for that question. The truth is that courage is not the absence of fear. We have to let them know, number one, whether you feel afraid or not, because the fear is always going to be there. So whether you speak up or not, you're going to have that stigma inside of you. So you choose your heart. You choose whether you want your heart to be the regret of not speaking up, or whether you want the toughness, the hardness of you having to speak up, and then let your speaking up be a voice for other people. Because there is this saying that they say, if each one can reach one, then it takes one person to make a difference. So we don't have to. What we do is we let each and every individual know that you can't afford silence. No. Silence is golden. Silence is also dangerous. It's not as if there's no improvement. We can't compare the statistics of what we had in 2000 to what we have now. It may look like it's a little development, but there is something that is happening. It may not take a long, just like when you go to the gym, it's not immediately you work out that you start seeing the progress. But some people tell you, oh, you're not losing weight or you're not building muscle, but something is happening in your body. And so something is happening. And it's because they feel a lot of change is something that is not easily accepted. We're going to face restrictions. We're going to face barriers. We're going to face people trying to, push back. But the more they try to push back, the more we keep pushing and we don't stop because of what we see. Take, for example, while I was in Lagos, serving at the Lagos State University as one of the academicians in the anatomy department, the United Nations Population Fund appointed us as one of the mentors for the students. And one of the stories, in fact, we had, it was a gruesome experience when we had the students come out and started sharing their experiences. These were students who, one of them gave an account, going to secondary school and giving an account of the principal of that school. The principal will impregnate a student and turn that student to be a baby-making machine. Not for one set, not for two set, and it kept happening repeatedly until they had to report him. These are real-life stories. In fact, we had an encounter where during our outreach, like the Directorate of the Sexual and Gender-Based Violence, because Lagos is one of the places where it was being spearheaded. And now we see it happening in other states. For example, Jos, we also have it here in the University of Abuja, where I work presently. We saw another situation where a student was reporting. She gave a report that the lecturer has been pressuring her and this and that. So when the team were on their way to that event, they caught that lecturer red-handed. I mean, the student was already opened up. Her chest was already out, and the man was just, we caught him about
devouring.
Yes. And then it was just in time. The team arrived just in time for that intervention. And the man was dismissed. And one of the things that we see that helps these things not to thrive is where we have women represented in leadership. And this happened when the Vice Chancellor of the Lagos State University was appointed, a female Vice Chancellor, that's Professor Ibiyemi Olatunji Bello. When we have women in authority, when we have women in leadership, when women are properly represented in the parliament, we have somebody speaking up, representing the opinion of the women. One of the version of the Apple Watches was withdrawn because they didn't have a woman to talk about how to monitor something as little as the menstrual hygiene that we have in the updated version of it. So we need to make sure that we don't stop the people from, they can't afford to keep quiet. They may feel afraid. You let them know, yes, you will feel the fear. But no, keeping quiet is not an option. No matter whatever choice you make, you have to choose your heart. Are you going to choose the heart of living in regret all the days of your life? Or are you going to choose the heart of facing your fears and being a voice and seeing what your fears, you exposing your fears, how it has given life to other people? Because when somebody sees, oh, my sister spoke up, and they say, oh, they did this to my sister and she spoke up. If you try to do that to me, I'm going to report you. I'm going to speak up. You're giving voice to someone else. Yes, you may have the mental challenges, but you're not going to give up. And the joy that you see being replicated in the lives of other people because of your impact and because of your decision to speak up is actually going to keep you going. And little by little, it's going to Healing is gradual. It's going to take a gradual phase. It's not going to happen overnight, but eventually you will get there. You may not get there 100%, but someday, somehow, you will know that you may not be where you want to be, but you're not going to be where you used to be when it started.
All right. Thank you very much. Before we go on, let me introduce Professor Joy Ngozi Ezilo, who has just joined us. She's a senior advocate of Nigeria, former UN Special Rapporteur on Trafficking, founder Women's Aid Collective, WACOL, and former Dean, Faculty of Law at the University of Nigeria. Nsoka, it's a pleasure to have you join us on this conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right. Let me just get you in the deep immediately. What are the, or how do we improve?
When you say
the
deep, that's
systems?
violence.
Now I feel endangered.
understand.
now I feel
You're
endangered.
protected.
How do we enhance or improve the mechanisms for holding perpetrators of gender-based violence to account, especially in states with weaker judicial processes?
Yeah. Thank you very much. I think raising accountability stake is very important, because what we've seen with regard to gender-based violence or violence against women and girls is an issue of impunity. So when we talk about Unite campaign, it's just unite to end the impunity of gender-based violence, to end violence against women, and to hold perpetrators to account. And within that, the government also have accountability, because the state responsibility ultimately reside in government. And when we talk about government in this sense, it means both executive, legislative, and the judiciary. All of them have a role to play. Of course, the executive may, just like we have laws, the extant laws have to be implemented effectively. And for you, if the legislature have enacted a law, to implement it, you need the necessary budget, you need the necessary political will as well. And then the judiciary have to also perform theirs, because the problem is that victims never get justice. They hardly get justice for 1 in every 10. In fact, if there are 10 cases of rape, only maybe 3 will get reported. There may never be a conviction. And if they come today, come tomorrow, and then they are actually pulled out before the public as if to doubly victimized, exposed from the time of reporting to police to coming every day. I mean, I have one case that even the victim became so traumatized because she was being asked to come to police station almost every day. The parents had to travel, from Lagos all the way to the east, where the problem, where she was raped by even a driver that was just convening her she was coming back to school from Lagos. And then he got handed over with all this transfer they do at Onitsha. And then they got somewhere before nightfall, because she was still a very young girl who wasn't familiar with the terrain. They raped the driver, diverted, took her, and raped her all through the night. And when this pathetic case came, unfortunately enough, the perpetrator was captured. But before you know it, the case quickly again turned against bring money today, bring money, because there is also commercialization of police services. And all of that are diminishing the accountability that we're talking about and promoting effective implementation of extant law. Where do you start asking victims to bring money for test, bring money for even arrest of the perpetrator in a case that is a state responsibility to provide for this? I think we need to really track and trace even budgets from the police, for example, to make sure that there is a budget mapped out towards dealing with gender-based violence or violence against women. Because it's happening not just on gender-based violence. We all are aware now that the police services are heavily commercialized, even at state level. And this is really, you may see the headquarters working, but definitely they can't affect us. They will tell you about fuel, they will tell you about vehicle. You have to, pay the doctor, whether it's a police doctor. You have to also pay for even pathological tests that will enable you to get the necessary forensic for proving rape. Where does it happen in the world? So we don't take this thing seriously. I believe the government should act urgently to redress this situation. It should be zero tolerance in terms not just on gender-based violence, zero tolerance on corruption, because corruption undermines accountability for holding perpetrators to account in cases of gender-based violence.
All right, many
And
thanks.
I think enough is enough with regard to this attitude, our attitude, because you can't tell a woman who is battered by the husband, who turned to police station for help, next you tell her, madam, you have to leave the house. Some even men go to police station, misuse the police to eject their wife from their matrimonial home and children, abandon them. I have a case with a baby, and then they turned up police station and he said, we advise you to leave. Just go and find somewhere you can sleep. Is it not the man that's supposed to leave? Don't the man have responsibility for maintenance of those children? So it's really a situation that we must address, because elsewhere in the world, I was a UN Special Rapporteur on human trafficking every part of the world. And you see, when you talk about institutional mechanism for responding to cases of violence, and I've overheard my sister Moji talking about the issue of Lagos. That is because they have put money to an agency that is responding, rapid response to victims of violence. Every government must budget for this.
In other words,
they must have shelter, for example. If you don't have, you pay service providers, because in fact I don't even encourage government to set up shelters, but there are NGOs that have it. Pay those people to provide those services, because they can run it better and more effectively. There is legal aid program. Expand it to include also access to justice for women. There is so much unmet justice needs.
In other words, there are institutional issues in all of this.
It is huge.
Let me
problem.
Let me ask Dr. Plansat, in all of this, if we are still talking institutional problems, we've had the 16 days of activism for God knows how long.
Since 1991.
So would we say we are making progress? Because otherwise it becomes just ceremonial. We get the orange and all of that, and we are, we're marking it. If we haven't made as much progress as to get the buy-in of governments via, providing institutional frameworks, that work, are we making progress?
I think I'll start from the point of saying we are making progress. As one of the contributors earlier said, tracking this progress might not be as quick and as visible as we think it is. But one thing we must celebrate is the fact that we now have laws in place
that are not implemented.
That's one level of progress. Are you getting it? That's one level of progress. That if something happens, an instrument you can use. Are you getting it? It's a level of progress. 2, people are using these same laws, are using these same provisions, policies, etc., for advocacy. People are also using this same thing for budgetary purposes. You heard what Professor Joy just talked about. Because once these instruments are there, it becomes easy to navigate. Let me tell you, for states that know how to use these laws, perpetrators have been brought to book using the same laws. Part of it is also because the women themselves don't even know the existence of these laws. They don't know how to utilize these laws. They don't know how to access these laws. Because of the economic conditions of women and girls, which over time is dependent on the economy of men in households, it puts them at a disadvantage. So when they face abuse, the first thing about, okay, how do I survive? You hear people saying, oh, I need to just manage just so I can get the children off school. So every patient is surrounded around managing the violence they are facing for that. And that's why, for example, in the Development Research and Project Center in DRPC, we talk about the women's economic empowerment as key to also fighting GBV. And you can reach the women's economic empowerment policy of the country and see the provisions and the different things it mentions there. What to do to ensure that you empower women and girls. Because empowering them is also giving them voice to speak out. Is also giving them the ability to stand on their own. It reduces family pressure. Because if the pressure was on one person, now the pressure is is going, this you're providing and providing, everybody is working, everybody is busy. If there's an abuse, I can even provide the fuel. Are you getting it? I can provide the photocopy paper in the police station. We will be talking at the level of economic empowerment. And so these things are deeper than we think it is, but progress is being made. In institutions, for example, we've been mandated now to have the sexual harassment policies. Most institutions have the gender policies. They all derive from these national policies we're having. It is progress. Students are speaking. We're making them form clusters and groupings where they're able to talk to each other when they meet. And she will not agree with me in terms of the number, because I'll tell you to always follow the number. Because it speaks. If something becomes a pandemic, it speaks because it just blows. Every day we're talking about girls being abused, we're talking about women being abused, and we're not following the numbers. We have to follow the number. And then we just don't follow it. We follow it to do something with the numbers. When girls meet and when boys meet, what do they talk about? When do they talk about respect for one another? Do they tell each other that what you see, you don't touch? That even when you see somebody dressed half naked, that it's not a license for you to touch? Mind you, this same set of people within this same community who are living here giving excuses for violence in terms of, oh, they are dressed naked, they are not dressed well, carry them and go and keep them in another environment within 24 hours. They could travel from Nigeria, for example, to go to another country. This same explanation wouldn't exist.
Without prejudice to what you say, I'm sorry, Henry.
Yes.
Without prejudice to what you say,
Yes.
but is this not also an issue? Self-preservation is the first law of nature. Is it not also something to think about? The way you carry yourself, the way you, you know, present yourself and all of that. Are those not issues
your
at
mind
all?
from that, because enough research has been done and there is no link established between dressing and harassment.
If you say dressing
Calm
and
down,
harassment,
let me
but what
continue.
about attitude? A
I'm
lot of
also
people-
continuing.
Just
let
a
me
minute.
finish. She just talked about an 80-year-old, for example.
What attraction?
You talk about a 3-month-old baby, a 5-month-old baby. Are you getting it? There was a case of a lady talking on a program, and she had to talk to somebody who said, oh, it's about, she said, I was fully veiled and I was raped. We need to disabuse people's mindset and make them think. You see, we make men think they are helpless. And I think the men too should not internalize that. Because over time, they have internalized the fact that we are so helpless. If we see, we must act. If something happens to our body.
There is no excuse.
There's no excuse whatsoever.
All right, Prof.
There's no excuse, there is no justification. But we have to interrogate all the aspects.
Even in school, on campuses, even as a law student, they dress well, they have to wear the... But I just want to tell you, when I have handled thousands of cases and I see babies
that are raped.
Linked to
No,
dressing.
no, but away from dressing, Prof, I want to draw your attention to attitude. A lot of people who have been victims of domestic violence, even in their homes, wherever, they tell you it's the way you behaved as a woman that is responsible. No, but I want us to deal with this. These are the issues. Because if a woman comes out to say that, oh, I've been involved, my husband beats me up or he does this, they tell you, oh, it's the way you speak with him or what you have done and all of that. How do we deal with this particular issue? Because some women are afraid to speak up because they think they'll be blamed for what they go through.
You're very correct, because blaming the victim or survivor is always very common. And then when it comes to women, they think, oh, they talk too much. They run their mouth and then they provoke the man. But just think of it. Even your colleague in the office can provoke you and fellow man. Will you bounce on them? There are different ways to respond. But I agree with you that we need to also have a program where you also educate people, even women. We did that even during COVID time because people were on edge, and then there was so much people who were even casual workers weren't earning money. And we had so much cases then around even insecurity, and then also insecurity in terms of food, and other human security issues. So people were on edge, and we were able to, talk to women, held a number of seminars, how to deal with it, including men. Because you find that responses even some people will agree that they need to deal with their angers. That's why when you have domestic violence cases, there is a way you deal with it. You can divert even the perpetrator and say, go to counseling, do community service, and then you take them through that, see whether if they don't also, get better, then you can criminalize, in terms of a punishment because you want to ultimately protect the family in the long-lasting relationship of a family, but not at the altar of ending someone's life. So, but that attitudinal issues, it got across because it's about upbringing, socialization, internalization,
culture, religion,
masculinity, the way it manifests, the way it's exhibited. And then you're told you're a man enough. If you're a man, you're a man of the house. So that means always your authority will prevail. And nobody should challenge
I quickly want to add too that as women and family members, we also have a huge role to play. If you play it out on your sons, for example, and make him feel so special and better than the girls in the house, you are beginning to, you have a seed that will eventually become a perpetrator. We see at the family unit, and I'm very involved in this, where the mother will say, go and show your strength. You are a man. No. Yeah. It's wrong. You are grooming a would-be perpetrator.
And some mothers will tell their sons.
Yes, and we need to speak to this. We need to speak. I have a letter, and I keep, when eventually the book is, I'm the first child in the family, so I'm a woman. And my father reminds me, bless his soul, every time, that Muji, you are in charge. In charge of discipline, in charge of what your brothers and sisters would do. But parents, we've lost it, and we need to speak about it. True. We've lost it.
Because there's some preference ideology
yes, because that helped me. So I saw my contemporaries, even when I was just one woman in the newsroom, as equals, as people who are my friends. Not that because you're a man, it doesn't make you any difference.
But away from the home.
No, home is very important. It's very fundamental. It's the foundation. We're leaving the home. We're going to schools, and you become exposed to the world. And now we're in an open world. I said that. We're in an open world. We're here speaking to these, and people who have the advantage or who have the opportunity are watching us around the world. So the issues around GBV is a collective responsibility. It's not just, and we're still paying lip service to it in Nigeria. Because even shelters, we don't have shelter for them. We don't have enough human resources, even for the basics of counseling. A child, a man, a woman, a girl who has been so molested needs some special intervention. Are they available? Are these interventions available?
You see, maybe we should focus on having to nip it in the bud instead of dealing with it after, because prevention is indeed better.
Because dealing with the aftermath takes more money.
Exactly, so, and then damage has been done. But talking about prevention, you want to talk about our culture and our religious institutions.
Exactly.
What role they play in all of this?
They have a role, because even from the schools, the textbooks, how they perpetuate and reinforce sexist ideology, the stereotypes. You go to church, it is the same stereotype.
You have to be submissive, and submission is defined.
Every day it is said, but they don't also say the obligation, for a man. And we know also everywhere, in fact, there is no culture or ethnic group in Nigeria that I would say are more respectful of men. But they have different leadership positions that can help. We've long recognized that under Yoruba culture, for example, a woman, just like Chief Moji explained, will be seen as a leader, not just discriminated, but then there are other aspects with inheritance that is exactly discriminatory as well. So the issue is that the religious institutions, agents of socialization, they must, leaders, cultural leaders as well, understand what we are talking about with regard to gender equality or empowerment of women and girls, or ending or preventing violence. Because it is the cultural and sexist stereotypes that help to perpetuate this violence. So we need to invest more in creating awareness to prevent, to report timely. But the problem is that in timely report, I was once in the US, I mistakenly, as I was trying to dial 9, I didn't know I put it 3 times or whatever. Before I knew, police were at my door. And mind you, it was a hotel. In 2014, I remember, because there was also the time the Chibok girls were kidnapped, and I was still the special rapporteur on trafficking, and people were calling me, even in the US, for interview. And I saw police. I said, well, 3 policemen, hefty, not just one. And they said, oh, you died 999. So they were responding. And now they already knew, even my hotel, traced the number to in front of my hotel room within minutes. In Nigeria, we've asked. One woman called me yesterday, that was 25th, and it really broke my heart, because I say even where she was, she didn't even know about what we're talking about, that 25th November is the International Day for Ending Violence. But she said, my husband is chasing me with cutlass. I'm inside a room. I have 2-month-old baby. And, I said, can you come out? Because we have shelter, we can help you. She said, I can't come out. And he's there in the other room. And he's been beating me. Yesterday, he beat me, and I'm not receiving treatment. If you see me, my whole body is aching and I'm bloody. And we've once asked police, a woman called like that, put out a suicide note on Facebook a few years back. And we called police, please, in Anambra, can you please help us go there? It's not a walk they are used to. They don't go to, but prevention is part of it. Being able to respond. If a woman call and say, I'm in danger, this is what is, then you go immediately. Even the fact that man or whoever is the perpetrator cite the police, that will nip it at the bud. And that will also let them know that it is not okay, and that next time that this is this, and they will be questioned. So we don't have that response. We're far away.
When you say
from
response from the police, that is even taking it too far. I want you to look at the home front.
No, but
first and
telling
foremost,
you, the home front, they respond that if you are, because remember, there is even the concept of family is in transition. There is a breakdown of home. People are in flats. People are living everywhere, far away from the kind of village setting that normally respond.
Away from that village setting.
Because those village
just a
settings
minute.
were actually very active in preventing violence. Because sometimes you beat a woman, they will organize their family members to go and repeat the same thing. And even their family member will tell you it's not okay, don't touch her. But these days, these things are broken down. Nobody is enforcing that.
And that's what I want to draw your attention to. You talked about the police and, the ineffectiveness in dealing with this issue. But let's look at how the family itself is dealing with this. A woman who is married has an issue or is being beaten by her husband, reports to her mother first, who
they will tell you
and the mother will tell you that's what I've been dealing with.
It's really sad, because the one that called me yesterday, I asked her, is there any relation around? Can you call your people? He said they will not support her leaving this marriage.
So that's
she said
exactly
so.
what you're...
All right, let's put you on hold just so that I can bring in Olajumoke to this conversation again. Now, since we are talking prevention, what role can education play, especially in rural communities of Nigeria, when we want to prevent gender-based violence?
Thank you very much. I was going to speak to what she was saying earlier, because, starting from the family, because that is the core of the society. You cannot take out the family from society. You can't take out where each and every family draws up their core value out of the society. For example, what do you say to a child? Do you teach your child the right that this is your body? You decide who touches what. You can't touch me in an unhealthy manner. You report. You let that, if the child comes and reports somebody to you as a parent, are you going to say, oh no, he's just been childish? No. We have to let the children know that if for you to make, out of all the people there, this child pointed at you, there is no mistake. Believe the child. It is safer for you to believe a child and find out that it was a lie, but than that you now make the child feel that the child can't be trusted, the child doesn't have somebody to run to, and then becomes a child that has been grossly abused and molested, taken away and being stripped of their dignity, because that is where issues like this start from. When the child reports, what does the parent do? What do the teachers do? Are they just going to sit back? Everybody needs to be educated. It's not even just about the education sector. This intervention starts from educating individuals, educating the parents, educating the teachers, educating the people at the different forefronts, educating the places where the people draw up their core value from: the church, the mosque, the place of worship. Any pastor that comes out and says that the Bible says that submission, see, no, I know what the Bible says. The Bible does not put the man and the woman to be under the man. No, it's not underneath. The Bible sees us as co-heirs. Those ones are just mere somebody trying to, emasculate, or trying to play down the role, or making the word suiting what he says to suit himself. No, you have the right to tell. No, I mean, we have the internet. Everything is open. It's there online. You Google it, check it. That's not what we don't say. We don't have a creator that is against his creation. No, you can't create something and say you just created that thing to be trampled upon. So I think that's where a lot of people get it wrong, because of the things that actually go viral. But those people that really speak the truth will tell you this is what the Bible says, or this is the fact, and this is the standard. It won't tell you that no, submission does not mean that you are
But
a
you know, many
doormat.
people who are listening to your sermon now will say that if women listen to your sermon and abide by it, then few marriages would exist.
No,
because
submission doesn't mean that
there's so many issues to this.
That's not what it means. It doesn't mean that you're to be trampled upon. A man that actually, for you to even be a man and start saying, "Do you know I'm the man of this?" That means there's a problem.
But what would you say
that,
for example, to a married woman who reports rape in the police station and is told by the police that he's married to you? You can't be reporting rape as a married woman.
We will go into all of this when we return from this break. We just have to pay some bills. Please stay with us. We'll be back right after this break.
Nigeria will only work based on collaboration. We need to start with a mindset shift. There needs to be a shift, in our mindsets to say we need to all see what we can do collaboratively to move Nigeria forward. Now, what am I saying? Without a doubt, this country is replete with talent. We've seen it across board. We've seen that Nigerians will find a way to try and make things work. How about we now bring that and we look to how we can scale it up? We need enabling environment from the government to be able to scale a lot of those things up. From the private sector, we need a private sector that's willing to unleash their own size, what they know how to do best, and collaborate with the government. Let's take access to finance. What are the limiting factors, and what do we need to be able to do to ensure that access to finance is not just at the top of the pyramid, but really trickles all the way down? Without a doubt, SMEs are the engine of any economy. A population of 200 plus million people. We need to find people who will be job creators, not everybody looking to apply for jobs. Some people must create the jobs. I'm particularly enthused at what I see as the young talent in Nigeria, of which there's so many of them. I'm enthused at what I see them doing. They get up and they decide, we will create the jobs. They're creating new markets. They're creating new sectors for us. Now, what does the federal government need to do? Simply enable that, and then give them room to run. Applaud when it's working. There are times perhaps when we must look at concessions to say, well, this is the intent. This is what we're trying to achieve. What do we need to put in place to help them? We will need to buy some time, without a doubt, to be able to see the reforms, bear fruit. And I'm very optimistic about Nigeria. I remain extremely optimistic about Nigeria. People talk about the Japa syndrome. Well, I Japa'd and I Japadad. No, I didn't actually Japa, but I worked abroad and I came back. There are many stories that abound of people who worked abroad and, who were doing really well, but we felt we had to come back to contribute. I believe that we must allow the innovation and the talent in this country come to the fore. If you look for the silver lining, you will find it. And therefore, what I think that Nigerians can do individually is this. Rather than us, sit in our different armchairs in our different living rooms across the country complaining, look at where you can plug in. There's a dearth of, whether it be volunteers or voices that both critique and proffer solutions. We need to redress that balance. and look for a lot more who are willing to proffer solutions. I believe that there are many platforms by which people can contribute. It starts with us deciding, you know what, this is my country. You know, I should have a say. I have something to add, I have something to contribute, and everybody does. The countries that are doing better than us across Africa, they don't have better people, they don't necessarily have better resources, they don't necessarily have better management. Perhaps they have a better followership.
November 2024. Can some of our tertiary institutions be at variance with laid-down procedures across key management positions, inconsistent in financial regulations, and other issues of governance deficit in our academic communities? Find out on NTA Tuesday Live every week at 10:30 p.m. It promises to be inclusive, incisive, and educative. Join us.
All right, welcome back. It's still Good Morning Nigeria, live on the network service of the NTA. And our topic today is on 16 days activism against gender-based violence. It's not a good day for Victor. He's been suffocated in the studio. We have another woman joining us for the conversation. Niri Goyit, Women's Rights Specialist, Action Aid Nigeria. Many thanks for joining us, Niri Goyit. All right, so I think I'll just bring you into the conversation. By the way, if you feel pity for Victor, that's how I feel. The way he feels today is the way I feel every time we have more male guests in the studio. So, I mean, we're trying to strike a balance today. So many thanks to the producer. Anyways, but let's get to Niri Goyet. So, you know, so much has been said about the issues that women face as regards gender-based violence and, you know, in the bid to deal with it, what they still have to face and all of that. But I'd like to hear from you. Let's look at solutions now. I mean, we've highlighted the problems, the issues, government, parents, family. But in your own view, what will be the way out of this such that 16 days of activism would not just be a time to talk, but a time where we'll get to see action and get to see some form of progress in terms of, you know, these acts being perpetrated against women and girls?
Yeah, thank you very much. Very interesting conversation that has been going on here in the studio. I would like to say that for us to think and ponder on the way forward, we need to understand the impact of gender-based violence on the individual, the family unit, the society, and the nation at large. There is a report that has just been released by UN Women in this year, 2024, you know, on femicide. You know, gender-based violence, you know, leads to death. And in the last 1 year alone, you know, data has it that 85,000 women around the world died in the last 1 year as a result of gender-based violence. So when the society needs to understand the impact, how it robs the society of potentials, how it's taking life. You know, without this understanding, you know, we will have people and institutions dragging their feet towards investing, you know, on ending gender-based violence. So to end up and prevent gender-based violence, basic things need to be in place. We need, thank God that we have the Violence Against Person Prohibition law in most states. We need those laws to be implemented. We need awareness created, you know, at different levels, from the primary, secondary schools, women and girls, even boys. Boys go through gender-based violence as well. They need to know the available laws and policies that protect them, so that when issues like this come up, they know that this is a violation of human rights. Then we also need continuous education on, you know, on reducing the power imbalance between men and women, because gender-based violence is a power-based violence where, you know, someone in the society has more power than another person, and they take advantage of that to abuse, you know, the female. So we need, you know, programs that help to teach men on positive masculinity. And I think that our religious and traditional leaders, we need a lot of capacity building training and retraining for them, because their manner of counseling and interventions when families experience gender-based violence are things that they have adopted from previous generations without looking at the impact, what is costing the women, what is costing the society, what is costing the family. So they need to be trained and retrained, like from the previous discussants, someone mentioned about even the misinterpretation of religious books, because most times men have been the one that mount the pulpit. So a lot of scriptures, both from the Muslim and the Christian side, are being misinterpreted most times by the male gender to favor the male gender. Because if you look at, issues of marriage, most times, you have the woman being preached out. But when you look at Ephesians 5, it goes to talk about the responsibility of the man, which is even more difficult than that of the woman. Loving the wife as Christ loved the church and laid his life down for the church. That is more difficult to accomplish than even, telling the woman to submit. And submission comes easy when there is love. But men have not been taught what love is and how that is, exemplified, through the life of Christ. So most times, these scriptures are being misinterpreted. And we have scriptures that say, submit one unto another, and, where Paul talks about, there is neither, Jew or Gentile, male or female, so, scriptures, women need to understand and learn scriptures for themselves. Men need to, be trained on what, what the spirit of this text really mean, to be able to reduce this power and gender-based violence that we have in religious settings.
Let me put you on hold here. Thank you very much. Even though I would have preferred you to say that many men, maybe not men, have not been taught, because I know what I was taught. But let me get to Chief Bojuma Kojola. She's been itching to lend her voice to some of the issues raised in the studio before we went on that break. So,
yes, well, I was saying that, yes, we have laws in place, but are we tracking implementation? I'll give that responsibility to the media. Yes, we are talking about social norms. We have our experts. Are we actually looking at the peculiarity of who we are as a people? Because what obtains and what is what works for us, it's not one cap fits all. We must also work with our peculiarity in terms of our culture, our tradition. There are things that we can still go back to. We have become so foreign in what can work for us. Let's look at those things that worked at the beginning. Let's look at those village peer group meetings.
But those will also take us to listen, culture.
Listen to me. Listen, there's no ship without a captain. Mm-hmm. But the captain must be one that is ready to, carry on everyone. We're not sitting here and pretending, yes, but we cannot tolerate the zero tolerance to violent captains. That's what we are saying. We're looking at family values. You are who you are today. To be able to sit around women and feel so comfortable is because of
He's not comfortable.
He's very comfortable. I can see him. I did a bit of psychology, so I know he's comfortable. He's more relaxed than he was because he knows that he's sitting.
This seat is vibrating.
This seat is vibrating. Okay, but seriously, we need to start. And I keep going back to the family values. You can't sit around and groom children who will eventually become perpetrators and think that they would, it's at this level of 16 days when we are making noise about it that you want to change them. They become clay in your hands from day one. So it's how you mold them. So parents, even mothers, I keep saying mothers too have a role to play. I'm from a constituency that is powerful. And that's why we're here and we are grateful to the management of NTA to give us this platform to speak. I hope it's not just a one-off in the 16 days. But seriously, the media has a big role to play. The media has, we're changing concept.
How big?
Huge, you should ask me, in creating visibility, in ensuring implementation of the VAP law, in tracking it, in accountability framework, in ensuring that all these things that we speak about are the ones that we report, that we are not just event reporters. We are reporting the 16 days, that's it. We should make sure that we follow up on victims, on people that have been so perpetrated and are ready to speak out, so that people realize that they say, no, Moji, you make too much noise about this GBV. Where are the people? Whereas the figures are rising, where they are rising. Where are they rising? We must be appropriate. We can't sit in the comfort of our offices and expect that we will see the victim. We must reach out, especially at the rural areas. We must go there. We must dig deeper than we are digging as journalists. But most importantly, we must speak to figures. We must speak to figures, follow the figures, and so that next year, by the special grace of God, if God's sparing our lives, we can come here and do a comparative analysis, which we don't do and which are necessary for growth and development.
All right.
Having said that, we must not forget the fact that, yes, proportionately, more women are victims, but our boys too. There's an increase in what they're doing, GBV affecting our
Some
boys.
say men are now endangered species.
I don't know.
I wouldn't say men.
I'm not saying men, but boys.
Because everything,
For our
because
boys.
even when you say gender connotes male, female.
it connotes
But when we
men
say
and
gender, women take it, oh, it is ours.
No.
We are talking of gender. No form of violence should be allowed.
For
Whether
any-
against a man or a woman or a girl.
All right,
Fantastic.
thank you.
We
You
condemn
know,
that.
All right.
But why we focus on children, especially male children, is that think of sexual abuse. And we've handled, because we run Tama Sexual Abuse and Referral Center. You see small boys who are just also raped. Theirs is worst, because especially if they are within that age of puberty and they are just confused about what this is about, but they know, so they will not talk to people about it. You know, they are most likely not to talk about this.
And
For parents may not notice as much as they would have noticed that of a girl child.
I think Dr.
it is-
Plansat also has something to say about this.
So no, it is
No,
important.
but that's just why we should talk about the women. I agreed about the boys, but there's this report today in the papers that says that one woman is killed by her partner or relative every 10 minutes.
Every 10 minutes, a woman dies.
because we
every
don't
10
highlight
minutes.
the
That
other
is those that
side
are
of
killed
By partners or their relatives.
no, by partner or relatives. And it is both. Because you can
the side
see,
you talked about.
No. The issue is very serious.
It's a very serious issue.
So can we just listen? Okay.
Talking about data, I'm following data. That's why that data was captured. And it wasn't just captured lightly. They did their work, surveillance, and survey around the world. Every 10 minutes, some put it 11 minutes. But between 10 and 11 is almost a woman is killed by a partner or relative. I've seen a lawyer who was sitting in chambers and the client, a woman who came to ask for divorce, was killed by a relative of even hers who said it's abomination. We've told you, you cannot proceed to divorce your husband. It will bring shame to the family. Family honor.
All right, let's begin. As we round off the conversation, let's begin to look at solutions. But just to quickly mention that the NTA is doing so much, just to make it clear. About 2 years ago, we had a campaign against rape. For every news bulletin that we read on this station, on the network service of the NTA, there was a jingle that ran at the end calling for an end to rape. So, of course, the media, has been in the forefront. So let's look at solutions now as we round off.
That's part of the solution.
Yes, of course. That's why I mentioned what the media is doing. But let's look at other sectors now. Religious bodies. I know that Madam Giri spoke, Niri Goyit, spoke about what religious bodies could do. But, as we round off, I'd like Dr. Planksa to tell us, what are your recommendations going forward? Madam Makonjola said the noise making. This shouldn't be a noise making every time is 16 days of activism. We should see solutions. We should see people, we should just see real solutions and the numbers reducing. So what would be your recommendations?
Well, I would say that we need to work with government, those in authority, to ensure they implement those laws they signed and passed. They need to understand the implication of non-implementation of those laws. Laws don't implement themselves because people assume that once you pass laws, they will implement themselves. But laws don't. Human beings do. So people in offices should be held accountable. Surprisingly, the police has a gender policy. They have a gender policy. But then you could see that most people there don't understand. So we need to educate people. Both in formal spaces, it has to be a top-bottom and bottom-up approach. Everybody needs to know. So this same police with the policies, for example, they need to know what the policies are, the provisions, what they can do to help in the implementation of those policies. We need to hammer on the economic empowerment of women. It is at the center, because at the end of all interventions, even when you take women to SAC centers, how long can you keep them in the sexual assault reference centers? How long can you keep them? How long can you continue to provide for them? So empower them. And also educate the boys. Like I said, the education should be targeted. It shouldn't be a cocktail. So when you're educating women, you know what you're educating them for. And when you're educating boys, you know what you're educating them for. Surprisingly, Alliances for Africa did some work recently on sexual harassment in tertiary institutions. You know, often we assume that it is the lecturers and the numbers came to show that even the students themselves are into serious sexual harassment. And these things are not captured. You would see girls and boys living on campus as husband and wife.
Yeah. All right, because of time, we need to wrap up. So, Dr. Dinya, I would like you to speak. I'm surprised nobody has talked about women in politics. Maybe if we have more women in leadership position.
Women in governance.
Okay.
Yes.
Women
Women
at the
in
beginning of this
leadership.
government, we had promises that, you know, women are going to be well represented, and we were hoping to see more of the women getting represented in government. And secondly, the traditional leaders, because we look at them as if they don't really have the say. But a lot of times, if they tell you that they are going to have, there's this festival, you're not allowed to get out of your house. No matter your rank in the society, you will sit at home. They have their own place. And they have their impact on these people. They need to educate them. Why? Concerning their traditional practices, female gender mutilation is still being practiced in a lot of places in Nigeria. Early child marriage, I experienced it in one of our outreaches at the Health and Safe Motherhood Foundation where I heard. We saw one of the girls being given out to marriage. We need to let these people know that this is not right. A child is not a bride. We need to let them know the laws, what is obtainable. We need to also access and tell the men, the boys, just like you said, what are you posting on the social media? Everybody is involved. Are you sexualizing the female gender? Are you giving them the opportunity because you think, oh, she's a sexual object? Or because you want to give her the opportunity because of what she has to offer? Let everybody be given the same opportunity. Let everyone be educated. And most importantly, let everyone join and unite in this force. It is not just one set of people. It's not just for the women to speak against
all
it.
right.
It is each and every one of us that we have to speak
Thank
against
you,
it. Thank you very
because we
much.
are running out of time. Let me give Niri just the next minute or so. Now, I just want to read from this so that we can focus as well our activism and the work that we do. Now, the 2014 Nigeria Violence Against Children Survey, which was conducted, of course, by the federal government in collaboration with UNICEF, says that 10% of boys in Nigeria experience sexual violence before the age of 18. Now, this is something to think about, isn't it, Niri?
Yes, it is. It is. Boys do experience sexual violence. However, research shows that more girls experience sexual violence than boys do. And we are talking about solutions. Going forward, we need to invest. Government needs to invest, put a budget line for response and prevention of gender-based violence. Like Dr. Plank said, it is not enough to pass policies. Our ministries, need to have that budget line. Every ministry, Ministry of Justice, the security, they need to have a budget line dedicated to gender-based violence. And, development partners, ActionAid as an organization, we do invest in prevention and response of GBV. Right now, we have a program that is going on called the MAP GBV project, funded by Ford Foundation, where we are working with traditional and religious leaders who are the opinion leaders in our society, where we are training them that they are beginning to lead the campaign to end gender-based violence in our communities.
Thank you very much, Niri Goyita. We need to wrap up. I'd like to get to Professor Ezielu now. But, talking about the statistics he reeled out about sexual-based violence against boys,
sure
most of them are being practiced by men or by boys against boys.
It's actually
it's
boys
different
against
for
men. But what we
women.
just have to know is that gender-based violence is prevalent. It is an epidemic. The impunity continues because there is no accountability. So there is urgent call for accountability by all stakeholders. In the justice ecosystem, we all take part. But the government take the larger responsibility, and we must begin to put in money, and show political and economic will to fight this crime, because it actually affects society.
All right, thank you very much, Prof. Like Chief Makonjola to wrap up now in 15 seconds.
Okay, I'll try. It's been wonderful, but it's a collective responsibility, and it's a call out for everyone. It's not just the responsibility of those of us that are here, but wherever you find yourself, say a word, say something. If you see something, even if you do not see something, the next 16 days will be very active. But let's make it a continuum, not just a one-off.
Thank you.
The media, you have a big role.
Thank you very much. The media will definitely play its role, and I'm sure that the NTA will be at the forefront. Of course, many thanks to Olajumo Kadini, Head of Operations, Hassan Foundation and Gender Advocate. Thank you for joining us. We do sincerely also appreciate Niri Goyit, Women's Rights Specialist, ActionAid Nigeria. Thank you for joining us. Dr. Dayil Planksat, Gender Specialist and Experience Policy and Development Analyst. Thank you for being our guest and coming all the way from Jos. Professor Joy Ngozi Ezialo, SEN. I like the force with which you speak. A former UN Special Rapporteur on Trafficking and, of course, former Dean Faculty of Law